Okay, we're recording.
Okay, I don't have a gavel, but I would like to call to order the July 21st meeting of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission. And Dan DeGarmo, would you take roll call, please?
Chair Clark,
Here.
Vice Chair McCann,
Present.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
Commissioner Flanagan,
Present.
Commissioner Friedman,
Present.
Commissioner Futterman,
Mr. Present.
Commissioner Garrett,
Present.
Commissioner Gauthier,
I'm here.
and Commissioner Miller.
Yeah.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Dan. I'd like to welcome all of the commissioners, staff members, and visitors to our meeting tonight. This is our first meeting since February 18th. We will have time for public comments later in the meeting. And as Patrick said previously, please keep your microphones muted during the meeting and then raise your hand to be called to speak at the appropriate time, and then unmute your microphones. And there's a request not to use the chat feature in Zoom. The one thing I would like to announce is that Commissioner John Goins has resigned from the commission. He sent a message today. I'd like to thank him on behalf of all the commissioners for the work that he's done on the commission. I believe he started in the year 2017. The next item actually is not on the agenda in front of you. It's the acceptance of the agenda. I made a little mistake when I did the first edit of the agenda for this meeting and deleted the item for acceptance of agenda. So we will go forward with that. I don't think it's a problem. The agenda was emailed and posted on Thursday, July 16th per city policy. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Carl.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Chair
Chair
McCann.
Clark, can I just request one minor change
Sure.
to the agenda? I was just going to request that we move up the discussion of the demonstration garden and the airport turf conversion so that Todd Holmes, who's here to give that presentation, can do it before we do the old business.
That makes sense. We've had a motion and a second. I presume everybody will accept that minor change. All in favor of accepting the agenda as modified?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is accepted. The next item is a new one. Since we haven't met since February, and 5 months, there have been 5 months that have passed since we've met, and those have been challenging times. Manager Tallarico and I thought it would be helpful to start off with giving everybody a chance to speak, perhaps an icebreaker, and making brief comments on the subject we have listed there on the agenda. Share one sustainability themed insight you have gained during the past 5 months. Would anybody like to start? Well, I will, since I perhaps had a head start on this one. Clearly, we weren't prepared for COVID, and but it got me thinking about global warming and climate change. We certainly need to fight global warming and climate change. And we don't know what the manifestations will be in terms of human and animal health, food supplies, water supplies, and so forth. But planning to respond to whatever effects we have really should be part of the thinking going forward.
I have one insight that I could share. I think that in the midst of any sort of crisis like this, there are opportunities that present themselves, and the Trust for Public Land had contacted me regarding interest from the folks that saved Oswett Canyon and working with TPL to acquire some of the golf courses in Palm Springs that might be for sale so that they're preserved for best use, open space, and recreational use. And I think that it's a great idea to take those kind of opportunities in the midst of such times. And TPL would love to be able to come to our September commission meeting and present their ideas on those acquisitions.
Thank you, Greg. I would like to point out that we do have an item to discuss that in general later in the agenda, like Co-Chair McCann.
Can I add one? Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I've seen a number of times in both in Palm Springs and now that I'm up here in San Francisco for a couple of weeks, shops and stores that have taken over the parking space in front of them. They've taken over the sidewalk. I was just down walking through San Francisco in the Castro, and they actually have moved a gym out into the sidewalk into the street parking spaces. It seems a little weird, but there are people exercising and socializing, and I'm all for getting up a parking space if it means people can get outside. So I think there's some interesting and valuable things that we're learning about what can be done to free up some space that was previously commandeered by automobiles, and maybe that might influence us going forward. Thank you.
Bonnie.
I had a news flash from the California Energy Commission, and it's interesting because I've gotten this, but I follow the news and I don't see where it's come up yet. But it's titled, "New Data Shows Nearly two-thirds of California's electricity came from carbon-free sources in 2019. And at first I thought, oh, well, certainly everybody has heard about this, but I'm not seeing it publicized. I think they're checking it over and whatnot, but here we are. I mean, we weren't even in COVID at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's been a huge diminution of carbon using sources of energy at this point in time. I mean, like minus values and oil companies and major oil companies in California going through bankruptcy and such. And in 2019, CEC, California Energy Commission, estimates that 36% of the state's retail electricity sales were provided by renewables portfolio standard. And those are eligible sources such as solar and wind. That's 36%. That exceeds California's 33% requirement of retail sales come from RPS eligible sources by 2020. When sources of carbon-free energy such as large hydroelectric generation and nuclear are included, 63% of the state's electricity retail sales come from non-fossil fuel sources in 2019. So they're looking at this data again, and it looks to be. So we had the Senate Bill 100, which was signed into law in 2018, and it accelerated the expectation so that the goal would be 60% by 2030, which we've already met. So I don't know, I was pretty happy to hear this. And I think they're still going through the numbers. Maybe there's some weird stuff about it, I don't know. But I'm pretty happy. It's weird to be pretty happy when COVID's going on, but I feel extremely hopeful at this point.
Good.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Co-Chair McCann.
I am going to talk a little bit later about this Mesquite Desert Preserve concept that Greg mentioned. But I wasn't going to mention in that area another initiative that we've got as part of this. And full disclosure here, I'm on the board of Save Oswego Canyon Incorporated, and that getting this desert preserve together, and this is kind of our primary activity right now. So what I've been doing during my COVID vacation is going down to Tuckeats Creek virtually every day and measuring where it stopped flowing from about the end of April to when it reached the hypothetical western side of our preserve, which is Sunrise. And that happened on like June 1st. So, and then I've been correlating that with the flow rate. There's actually a measuring station up in the canyon that the USGS has been running since 1949. And they update its flow rate every 15 minutes in real time. So the point of doing all this is there is a river that runs through Tucson, and Pima County in Tucson has already implemented a program where they're taking their wastewater from their wastewater treatment plants and recharging the creek with it. So you're getting year-round flow now. And I was thinking, well, boy, does that sound like a good idea for our creek? Especially since if we are able to buy the golf courses, the water that they're using for irrigation now gets freed up for another use. And also it turns out that the city's wastewater, about 2 million gallons a day, actually is just going into percolation ponds. It's not getting used for any purpose. So we've got a fair bit of water at our disposal to carry forward with this. And the barrier at this point is regulatory. The question is what kind of regulations there are on water that recharges our aquifer, and whether we can get there with our wastewater treatment plant, and then the water that goes from there to the city's facility that then cleans it up in order for irrigation. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that.
Anybody else?
All right, I have a question. Roy?
Yes, go ahead.
This is sort of the opposite though. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I've noticed all the grocery stores have reverted back to bags, and a couple times I walked in with my reusable bags and they scolded me and said, don't put those on the conveyor belt. You can't bring those in here. We can't touch them. You had to use their plastic bags. So we kind of had to go backwards a step. It's going to take people a long time to get back to bringing their bags when this is finally all over.
One change that has come about, though, is that grocery stores are allowing people to bring their reusable bags in. I've done that the last couple of times that I've gone, and I've used the self-service, and I just bag them myself. But I was feeling the same way about the huge number of plastic bags that I got every time I went to the grocery store. Any other comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So something I've seen out of COVID that is positive is so many people in my neighborhood are walking and biking. And all of our cars are super dirty because nobody's driving very much anymore. And I know that that's happening across the world, that, you know, the pollution reduction is just allowing Mother Nature to kind of breathe and come back a little bit. And I think that, you know, something had to happen to stop humans in our tracks, because we were just, you know, going on business as usual. And so I think it's been a really good pause. And I think people are just thinking about health and wellness a lot more, and, you know, what makes us feel good. And many of us are on the computer more, so we're Zooming and using this technology to connect. And, you know, with our environmental art contest, it was a little bit odd. We didn't have as many entries, but, you know, we're just making do and being more creative in some ways to be able to still do the things that are important and that we want to do. So I'm meeting my neighbors, and everyone's walking their dogs, and it's pretty beautiful. So looking for the silver linings.
Thank you. Any more insights?
Patrick, if I can speak for a second.
My insight is since COVID, I've been reducing as much as possible my food shopping trips and relying on my garden. It is possible to grow a fair amount here in Palm Springs, obviously not right now in the summer, but through, I would say, late May, I had regular supply of tomatoes and kale and chard and lettuce. So I certainly want to encourage people to make their gardens grow. I'm looking forward to the new planting season. It's a lot of work, but I have been able to rely a lot on that. If not being completely food sufficient, self-sufficient, a lot of my fruits and vegetables now come from my garden, and it isn't that large. So I want to encourage that, and hopefully we'll see some more people who are planting, getting rid of some of their grass, because that's something DWA will support through their rebates and planting gardens in their state.
Thank you. Are there any more comments, insights? Well, thank you all for speaking. And now we can move on to staff comments. Patrick, I realized that when we moved up the item about the demonstration gardens, we didn't decide where it should go. Shall we just go through staff comments and public comments and meeting minutes and then do the demonstration gardens at that point? You're muted.
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is staff comments by Manager Tallarico. He did cover all the items most of the items in a memo that he sent to give you the essence of the comments and perhaps to shorten our discussion during the meeting, but I'll turn it over to him right now to go over the comments.
Yeah, so I included several things in there that have been going on since we last met, including a little bit on Earth Day activities that we tried to do virtually, a little bit on the pedestrian safety and safe routes to schools work that I'll talk a little bit more about later. The greenhouse gas inventory is kicking off, and they're actually starting their research now, so we should have something actually before our next meeting in September. We did a little announcements about Plastic Free July, and I don't know if you watch PSC TV at all, but we've got some slides that are filtering through there now on recycling and ones on Plastic Free July. So those are kind of rotating around on PSC TV. We finally got out the RFP on EV charging expansion, which I'm super excited about. And then I was working with David Friedman on some updates to the climate action roadmap, which we will talk in more depth about in September to make sure that we're keeping that up to date. And then I wanted to mention a couple of other things that weren't on there. One is just a reminder, it feels like it's been going on for a really long time, but the DCE actually launched in April. So thanks to all of you that have been involved in that process. And we have actually been pretty much on target in terms of the opt-in rates, opt-out rates. So we're still above, I think, 90% or so with regard to the opt-in to the full carbon-free option, which is awesome. And it actually has been turning out to cost less than we thought it did. So it's really a very small premium on people's bills, and now almost everybody is carbon-free. And those folks that chose Desert Saver are saving even more than we thought. So that's awesome, an awesome start. We did have a few questions and issues and concerns from some residents, and we hopefully addressed those as we got them. So anyway, so I think we're moving forward with that in a good way, and so we'll I'm sure others may have some more to say about that later on in their comments. Then I wanted to let everybody know that we have reorganized a little bit in our office. So our office is now part of the the development services office. And so basically now I report to Flynn, who's head of that office, and now we're being called the Sustainability Division. So we're a little bit more integrated into planning and building services, which is kind of interesting because and engineering, because I work with them all the time. So it provides us with a little bit more platform and entree into the work that they're doing, and maybe more insights into the projects that they've got going on. So I'm looking forward to that reorganization and to see how that plays out. And one of the things that we'll be talking about more in the future is the desire to integrate our sustainability work more into the general plan. So to kind of take our work and have it as part of that general plan. I still think we can pull it out and have our own separate document, but have it be more integrated into the general plan. And again, we'll talk more about that as we go forward in the fall. And then since Carl brought it up, the plastic bag ban is back into effect. We sent letters to all of the major retailers last week, reminding them that those single-use plastic bags are not okay anymore. We're giving them until August 15th to convert back over. And at that time, we'll go around and do little audits to some of the facilities to make sure that they're complying. And so looking forward to that, getting back to the way things were. But again, some of the stores still do require you to bag your own groceries. And I did talk to Jensen's, which was one of the primary ones that would not let you bring your bags into the stores. And I just reminded them that this ban is going away, or the ban's coming back, and suggested that they change their policy. So I think that they will be changing their policy soon too. So anyway, so that's on the radar. And the last thing I wanted to mention, which is the last thing on here, which is Gary Calhoun's retirement. So one of the things that we were sort of robbed of in our last, in the cancellation of our last meeting, was that we were going to announce that Gary was retiring. So Gary has retired. And so for those of you that don't know, Gary was our recycling coordinator ever since 2008. So he's been doing that a long time. He's been helping us at the city gather up all of our kind of not normal recycling stuff like toner cartridges and light bulbs and things like that, and making sure that those get properly recycled. He has always helped us out at the various events that we've had in terms of setup, takedown, answered people's questions. He also did a lot of rounds to the various businesses in town to assess their recycling practices and to help them understand what their requirements were, and to audit some of the construction jobs that were around town. And of course, he consistently reported out on all of those activities to the Sustainability Commission. So we really appreciate his efforts over the years, and he certainly has been an asset to this city. So we appreciate his work and wish him the best in his retirement. He did have a little health setback a couple months ago, so we hope that he is on the road to recovery. So, I think that's it on my comments, unless people have questions about anything that you saw in writing or that I just mentioned. David.
One, maybe two things.
Yep.
On EV chargers, this is in the public comment that I made to council, just actually to give folks an update. In addition to Patrick's work for the city installed EV chargers, the city council last month adopted an ordinance that goes slightly beyond the state code and requires EV chargers for new and expanded commercial development. So that's good. But in connection with that, if you could follow up with the relevant folks to see if you can get the AB 1236 ordinance back on the council agenda. That's now a state law that we were supposed to have implemented 3 years ago. It was on the council agenda for March 12th, and of course it's off the agenda. So if you could follow up with them, that's actually a sort of a fast track for in the private sector people able to get their EV charger permits installed. And then there's a little bit of a tweak which I can work on for the materials on the website, which need to be updated to reflect the state requirement. So if you could push that button up with the folks, and perhaps in one of the September meetings get on the agenda. And will you be discussing the general plan steering committee in the place of former Commissioner Goins?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I will defer my comment on that to that moment. Then. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Any other questions? All right, super.
So now we'll move on to public comments. This time is for members of the public to address the Sustainability Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. The Commission values your comments, but pursuant to the Brown Act, cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned for each speaker. Is there anybody present from the public who would like to make comments at this time?
Yes, this is Paul Ortega.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I was excited. I was at the Desert Water Agency's board meeting this morning when Commissioner Friedman spoke about this upcoming project at the airport. I had not understood that it was as far along as it seems to be. I was quite excited to see some of the results. I did go on after that meeting with the DWA to observe the concept materials. Some of you may remember about 12 years ago when I was on the Architecture Advisory Committee and we first encountered a redesign of landscape in the terminal area, the interior terminal area of the airport, which became quite contentious, going from a very tropical, grass-heavy design into something that was far more appropriate for a desert environment. So I'm very pleased to see that this is sort of the next evolution, it would appear. Just kind of general comments about the concepts, looking at the two that are present for the center area. My sense is this is almost sort of like a little bit of a park setting leading from the terminal out towards the city heart. It seems to me that if that is sort of the concepts that are being considered, that the first with the diagonal walkways seems to be a little bit more conducive to that, for sort of having a place for people to sit and rest and sort of contemplate. The concerns I do have, I know this is again a concept and you haven't really identified the plant material and such, but my concern always goes back to the maintenance. And I would say that overall this city public spaces tend not to be well maintained in the long run, particularly as it relates to so-called desert landscaping. And in particular, I would call out the wildflower garden and the edible gardens, which in our climate will be very seasonal. So that's one consideration to think about how those are going to look, for example, in the summertime. They're going to look horrible if they even make it through the summer. But just generally speaking, I think that that the maintenance in general is something where when you're using a lot more desert plants, so for example the native garden, the pollinator garden, and such, really should be the focus really should be on letting the plants just do their thing and not try to crowd them in and then have somebody having to prune them all the time. So I was happy to see some of the concepts for that median area on Kirk Douglas and also at the corner of Gene Autry and Ramon. I think those are, at least conceptually, seem to be really nice layouts that allow the plants to do what they want to do without a lot of human intervention. In my practice, I find that it's the least amount of human intervention you can build into a design is probably the best, especially in this public situation where maintenance and funding for maintenance may not be a top priority or in terms of budgeting. But overall, I was really pleased to see that, and I encourage you guys to move forward. And I know that you have the funding from DWA in the state. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other public comments? If not, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the meeting minutes, the February 18th meeting minutes. They were emailed and posted on Thursday, July 16th, per the city's policy. Is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Gauthier. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Who was that?
That was Bob.
That was me.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Okay, is there any discussion on the minutes? If not, then all in favor of accepting the minutes, please say yes or aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Kendra Garrett, aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. And now we'll move on. This is the point that we've decided to move the first item under new business to the recommendation for the demo garden and turf conversion at the airport. Would you like to start us off, Patrick?
Sure. So thank you. And so as I mentioned, tonight we've got Todd Holmes from David Evans Inc. here to help us walk through the design ideas. As you may recall, DWA had applied for a grant to do a demonstration garden at the airport or another city facility. And so in anticipation of that grant, we engaged David Evans to help us think through design options. And they were able to come out, do a little site work, take a look at the grounds of the facility, and go through a couple of iterations so that we had something to present to you today. What we would like to do is come out of this conversation with a recommended design, and it's fine to have some additional comments and tweaks to that design, but we'd like to get some clear sense of direction on what to move forward with in terms of a general design concept. Because the next step would be for us to present this to the Airport Commission to let them know that this is what the Sustainability Commission is recommending, and then move it forward to City Council. So that's kind of the process to move it through the system. Again, I think we're mostly focused on the demonstration garden, but we also wanted to share the ideas that we had for the rest of the turf conversion project as well. So as you may recall, we were trying to line up various turf conversion projects at the airport that as we get money, we would just sort of go through and address those projects as we get the funds. So, so that's where we are. And any questions before I turn it over to Todd, and then I'm going to share my screen too. So that'll be exciting for everybody. All right, so I'm sharing my screen, and I think everybody can see it, still see everybody on, somewhere on their screen. So, all right, so let me go down to the demo garden. All right. So Todd, I'll turn it over to you to talk through some of the kind of considerations and constraints that we were kind of working with. And I will say also that we did meet with a group, a small subset of you last week to get some feedback, and got some really good feedback, and some good questions. And so we incorporated some of those comments into this, the designs that we shared here for the meeting. So Todd can kind of go through that and any other ideas that we had that may not be reflected here yet. So, so Todd, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so Patrick, we're going to go ahead. We're going to do the geometric. We're going to show both alternatives.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we looked at the location of the demonstration garden, looking at the airport site, this seemed like an ideal location in terms of it's highly visible, which is an important characteristic of the demonstration garden, and it seemed like a really good candidate. So this was the location that we selected. So I think everyone's probably familiar enough with the airport to know, to be able to orient. You can see the fountain to the left there. The terminal would be to the right. So in looking at this area as a potential site, one of the things that was very important that we recognized right off the bat was it's a very strong visual connection between the fountain and the terminal and the view of the mountains in the distance. So we felt very strongly that we wanted to preserve that view and not block it. So trees were one of the things we decided that this would not be a suitable environment to plant trees to interfere with that. So that was one of the constraints that we recognized. Another is circulation. You can see there are crosswalks in between the sections. And we realized that we wanted to direct people to the crosswalks and not encourage people to try to cross mid-block. So that was another aspect of the of the design. Then we did two different concepts. This is the concept that we did that was to kind of reflect some of the geometric forms that you can kind of see around the fountain. One aspect of this that we always want to note when we look at plans, these are really ideal from like the perspective of a passing helicopter passenger, but a lot of times when you're on the ground, sometimes these geometric forms don't read as strongly. And so that's something to keep in mind in terms of looking at these, that how much that would be really something that would be picked up by someone at eye level. And then one of the things that was desired in the scope was to demonstrate synthetic turf, what that would look like. So the designs, we incorporated synthetic turf. And then we also wanted to demonstrate or have a variety of types of plant materials. And I think the comments earlier in the public comment were spot on in terms of the challenges with particularly the edible garden. I think that would be probably more in some herbaceous type plants that would be things that wouldn't be seasonal, because I don't think cultivating like a vegetable garden is going to be feasible. So that would be something we're going to have to be careful on plant selection there. Same thing with the wildflower garden. That's something we have to be cautious about that. But anyway, you can see native pollinator garden was something that was desired. So what we did is we tried to pick up the different types of plant material, spreading ground covers. You wanted to see something that would really enable a large coverage of an area versus something that would be cactus and succulent would be more scattered and you'd see more of the inert material. One of the things that we discussed with the small group was DG as a material versus crushed. And there were some concerns expressed with DG in terms of maintenance, and we also considered it for the pathways, and we really decided that DG was probably not a good material. So we went ahead and we decided that concrete for the pathways and also the inert material around the plants would be different gradations and colorations of crushed rock, and no organic mulch because of the being blown around in the wind. So that was another constraint that we had decided on. So again, this is the geometric pattern and then the next one, Patrick, I guess we could go to this was the more naturalistic. We went ahead and kept the strip in the center of turf, again, to kind of emphasize that lineal strength of the layout. And also that was an area where we originally thought about maybe doing some synthetic turf demonstration, but then we decided in discussion that a climate adapted turf that would be something that would demonstrate that would be great in the middle and would probably fit better with the other plantings. And then we pulled the synthetic turf out. You can see along the entry there, which these can be adjusted. Obviously, this isn't perhaps exactly where it would go, but the idea being the synthetic turf areas could be adjacent, but not within the areas that we set up as a demonstration garden. Also, you can see we have some benches that we placed. Also, please note these meanders on the pathway. These are just conceptual. We would define these in the final plan in terms of the shapes would be a little more worked out. But so there was a comment about shade for the benches. That's something that is one of the reasons the benches are along the sides too, so they're not in the middle. At this point, the scope and the budget doesn't include shade structures, but that was something that had been discussed as a possibility, as was the possibility of displaying public art in the demonstration garden at some location. And that's something that was just discussed as an option. It could be a future phase that could be added in terms of, there's various locations that could easily be accommodated, but at this time it's not part of the conceptual design. I think Oh, and also, you know, in terms of the density of the plantings, that was another good comment in the public comment section, that this probably does look a little too crowded, and I would agree wholeheartedly that the spreading things out to allow them to mature and not have to prune or hedge anything would be our goal as well. So that was a good, excellent comment. So, and I don't know, Patrick, is there anything else? I guess square footage wise, down at the bottom, you can kind of see there's a little more pathway on the previous one. So kind of more or less about the same though, in terms of roughly the quantity of plants in the areas.
Yeah, I think these, the two concepts represent kind of a different, well, two different concepts of what a garden might look like. And again, I think this second design reflects a lot of the discussion that we had last week. And the group really zeroed in on this particular design. And so we reflected a lot of those changes here in terms of the concrete path, et cetera. And moving the synthetic turf, and we could even go smaller with the synthetic turf area because that's actually a fairly expensive thing to do. So we want to incorporate that because we said that we were going to do that as part of the grant program because a lot of people are interested in that concept. And so figuring out kind of where to put that and how to kind of feature it without highlighting it too much, I think was really the goal. So anyway, so that's reflected here. And again, this concept could be modified too to get rid of that synthetic turf in the middle and have that as the other climate adaptive grass. So anyway, so those, I think those are the big things that we talked about. Like I said, I think this design resonated maybe a little bit more than the geometric pattern one. So we'd love to just maybe pause there and see if you guys have any questions about the demonstration garden itself concept. Again, we're going to be in the next phase of the project after the concept gets approved. Then that's where we go back and select the plants and do a more detailed design. So questions? Lonnie, Commissioner Muller.
Per se about concept, but I've been dying to ask Todd since our last meeting. When you say no organic mulch, now are you talking about bark dust or what do you mean by that? I mean, you're not talking about soil amendments, are you? I mean, what do you mean when you say that? No organic?
It's not soil amendments, definitely. But this would be on the surface of the ground as a material like gravel or is used to. A lot of times we'll have landscaped areas that will have like a layer of 3 or 4 inches of mulch on the surface of the ground. But one of the things we discussed was the conditions here are not suitable for that. So that's the organic mulch.
And then I just had one other, thank you for that. One of the things I've noticed in my gardening over the last 7 years is that now my garden is feeling the effects of the climate crisis. And the many plants that were so desert tolerant when I first came here, some of them are just not so tolerant, especially without trees, without places where there's shade. The sun can be glaring and just can burn them. And there's a lot of I've had to take out plants because of sunburn. So that I'm noticing that what I can plant in my garden has changed because of the climate crisis. And so, our discussion about plants, I think, has to take that into account. Times have changed and quickly.
Right. Yeah, and this area in particular is very sunny. So there is nothing blocking that sun in this particular corridor. So it's a good point.
Thank you.
Jim, is that a finger raised or are you just waiting? Okay. Okay. All right. So I'd like to kind of throw it back to the commission to get a sense from you if there is one or the other of these designs that you would recommend moving forward with. So yeah.
Get the non-visual commissioner out of the way here. My immediate choice would be the first option, which is the one that includes the climate adaptive turf down the center.
Okay.
And I'm rarely, if ever, a fan of synthetic turf. So if that could be reduced or eliminated, I would be good with that. And also, I think it would be a nice addition, other than a public art, or in addition to something ongoing. I do think it would be nice to have some shade height somewhere in there that might expand the use of the garden. But otherwise, I do like that option number one with the central strip. So that's
okay. Great. Any other folks? Comments or questions or preferences? Roy.
I concur. I like option one.
Mm-hmm.
For option one.
Yeah. And just to be clear, the option one is the one on the screen now. It's not the first one I showed you. Okay. Yep, Rob. You're muted.
I too prefer option one, although not strongly. I'm not even quite sure why I have that preference.
Okay. All right. Good.
My only comment is that I do agree with Lonnie that the use of succulents would be important in the design, as opposed to plants that are going to burn up and need replacement.
Right.
Right about that. Okay, David speaking. I also prefer the option that's on the screen. This is what I expressed when we had a little subgroup meeting. I think it's a little more free-flowing, and the other one, I agree with Todd that it would be, the geometric pattern wouldn't really be able to be discerned. And I compared this, the difference between the French formal garden and the English more, let it go. And free-flowing, I prefer the free-flowing option currently on the screen.
All right.
I had one more comment.
Yep.
I do think that the large synthetic turf area in the lower right-hand corner is awfully big, and
yeah.
it'd be nice if there could be some real plants there.
Yeah, we just sort of threw that in at the last minute. So that definitely we want to rethink where that turf may go and how it's used. The other thing that I talked about with Todd after we did this was there is actually a strip of grass. I'm pointing at my screen, but you can't really see me do that. Down here in the lower portion, right above the thing that says 5,000 square feet, there's a very long line of turf that goes down, and it basically, it serves no purpose. And so that would be actually a perfect place for some sort of a synthetic turf, because again, it may get trampled on a little bit, and it's sort of shaded from the sun, so it might perform a little bit better. And so anyway, so that might be another place we could think about it, but that's definitely something we'll talk more about, I think, as we refine the design. So. Yep.
Patrick, can I say one thing?
You can.
I mentioned this before. I do like the one that's on the screen now. My comment before, I know it's not in the scope of this project, but the fact that the rideshare is relegated to Siberia, it would be great if rideshare, Lyft, and Ubers could pick up in this beautiful new garden, because otherwise most people don't really get a chance to go out and see that garden. I know it's a whole nother project. You said you might check on it. And,
right. And in fact, as I'm sitting here looking at this, it could be, there's this little parking lot that's right here to the south of it. Maybe I could talk to them and see if we could somehow convert that into the holding pen for all the Uber and Lyft people, because I know that they were going to try to move it closer, I think, to the terminal. So,
right. I mean, not the holding pen with the car's weight, but it'd be great if the people that were actually going to be picked up could be picked up in this parking area rather than
Yeah.
way down at the road
Exactly.
entrance. So I know it's further down the road, but that's just my thoughts. Otherwise, it looks great. Thanks.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? All right. So it sounds like people are pretty much in agreement that we should move forward with option 1. So anybody disagree with that? All right. So we'll continue to think about this design and make a few tweaks to it. Again, like I said, the plan is to present it to the Airport Commission as a first, kind of get their input first, and then move it on to the full council. So, and I will also say that I think some of you may know that Tom Nolan, who was the director of our airport, recently left and moved out to Florida for some unknown reason. But he was an advocate for this and a supporter of it, and he actually met with us a couple of times to give us his thoughts too. So anyway, he was involved in the initial thoughts about this. So we appreciate that. And so Todd, you want to talk a little bit about the other turf conversion? So the other couple of designs that we've got are related to a broader turf conversion effort at the airport, which we would kind of phase in. And so Todd can talk a little bit about what's here and maybe as it kind of reflects some of the other stuff that's already there. So.
Yes, thank you. So one thing, so if what you see in terms of the differentiation of the background color, if you look at the upper left inert material photo, it shows that you have different gradations or sizes of truck and colors, which you can kind of see in this layout as in that background. That's what that represents. The originally we had many more bands, and in working with Patrick and the subcommittee, it seemed like simplifying that was a better way to go. And so this is kind of that moving in that direction. And then you can see within those areas, there's scattered boulders and planting groups that are fairly widely spaced. And then in this concept, unlike the other one, we have palm trees and accent trees that we've also added that would kind of match the surrounding area to some extent. So pretty straightforward. Again, fewer plants, fairly low maintenance, things that would be, could mature, not need to be, pruned or shaped or anything. And then the irrigation system would be fairly limited too because of the scattered plantings. So that's, kind of what this one is.
Yeah, and you've also got a couple pictures up here in the upper right. I don't know if that's Tockwitz Canyon, but that's kind of one of the general, when people talk about this kind of stuff, they usually use Tockwitz as kind of a reference point because they really like what's there. So I think that's a picture of that. And then this is also, the only other thing I would say is this is sort of consistent with the continuation of some of the desert scaping that has gone on at the airport before this. So it sort of fits right in.
Okay, and this concept for this corner, one of the things, Patrick, on this too that I wanted to note is we blocked out the other corner with this plant photos, but there's a design on the opposite corner. And one of the things we felt like when we looked at this was the airport entry, it's completely different than that commercial project entry. And so we didn't feel the need to sort of emulate what was there. We think this airport entry can kind of stand alone. So we originally had just worked with the turf area, which is in this one, you really can't, the turf areas was right in front. So we realized that to really complete this entry, we went beyond where the existing turf is to get to a low wall that has some accent lighting, and then to where the small trees are to really make a complete entry statement. So there's an existing 2 curvilinear walls with some uplights. And so we took advantage of that with placing the accent trees kind of behind. We have a little bit of a constraint. You can see the airport there, the perimeter fence encroaches pretty close to the corner. So to do a symmetrical layout of the trees, which we thought was important, we had to pull some trees in front because we just couldn't quite fit one in the back on the Gene Autry Trail side there. So that's kind of why you see the trees on both sides. But again, it's the same kind of inert materials with some boulders and scattered plantings. A little more symmetrical because of the symmetry of the layout of this corner entry. And then this would be a motif that would be continued on presumably down Ramon Road at some point as further turf conversions could happen along the way, which could emulate this. There's a lot of palm trees on this intersection, but originally we thought about those, but then looking at the proximity to the airport runway, even though there are trees directly across the palm trees directly across the street there, we thought it probably would not fly to, no pun intended, to have palm trees on the corner. So we just went with like low, which would be like, you can kind of see in our photos, some like Palo Verde type low trees that wouldn't be an issue for the clearance for the runway. So, and I think that's about it on this, unless, is there anything, Patrick, that you want to add?
No, I think that's about it. This little corner space is meant to be consistent with the one that's on North Chinatri and Vista Chino. So that would look a little more consistent with that. And then, like you said, we would sort of continue on to a certain extent the design throughout the other grassed areas as we get more funding to do more. So anyway, yeah, that's really it. Any questions or comments about the rest of the turf conversion? The other thing that would be part of this presentation on the rest of the turf conversion would be a phasing plan. And so we've asked David Evans or Todd and his team to go back and look at how we might phase in different turf conversion projects over time. So anyway, so they've done that and they've identified kind of a phasing approach, which I think starts with this corner and then goes out to El Cielo. So, okay. All right. Any other questions on that? You know, desertscaping is a pretty known commodity now, I feel like, so I don't think this is going to be super controversial. So I think it's going to be welcomed by lots of people. All right, well, super. I think that's what we needed for today. Again, I'll kind of keep you posted as this progresses and if we run into any other roadblocks along the way before we meet next time in September, but that's a great start. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
And we'll move on to.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, so long for now.
Okay. So now we'll move on to old business. And the first item there is the smoking ordinance. And you'll recall from the minutes of the February meeting that we had a discussion about the smoking ordinance. It's something that we discussed over a year ago, and the City Council had a subcommittee on smoking, and it really relates to smoking in public places. But the subcommittee was dissolved, and the Sustainability Commission was asked to take the lead and ultimately have a study session on the smoking ordinance. One thing that I did after the February meeting is I contacted Ron DeHart, who's the chair of the Human Rights Commission. The reason I did that is because at the time that we proposed and voted on an ordinance of the Sustainability Commission, which I think was spring 2019, the HRC also had an ordinance about smoking. And I wanted to find out if they were interested in working with us on the draft ordinance and was supporting the draft ordinance and perhaps participating in a study session. So Ron did reply to me, and he said that he had brought it up to the commission at their March meeting, but there were no takers. Nobody was interested at that time in working on or supporting the smoking ordinance. But he did say that his commission now has 3 new members, and when they meet again, he will bring the topic up. So I'll follow up with him and see if there is interest. But right now, we're not under the gun to have a study session, but it will be coming up sometime in the future, I'm sure. Any questions or comments? Okay. The next item is the Disposable Foodware and Plastic Waste Reduction Ordinance, phasing in next steps. Patrick?
All right. So this topic has come back. I presented it to the City Council. I was very surprised by their level of enthusiasm. And so they would like to proceed with an ordinance. And so the basic feedback that we got at that meeting was two things. One is to consider a phased approach, and the other was to push up the timeline for the polystyrene restrictions. So what I did was I went through the various elements of the ordinance draft that we had all reviewed and talked about last fall into this January. And what I did was a proposed phase-in schedule of the various components. And so I wanted to run through those with you all to get your feedback on them and to see if you had any other thoughts in terms of phasing or additional things to put in here at this point. So anyway, so for the January 1st round, I think these are all fairly easy, straightforward things. Limit disposable foodware accessories to on-demand only. Again, this is something that people are actually already doing as part of some of their COVID restrictions. The second thing was require that all straws be non-plastic and compostable. Again, it responds to that demand to get rid of straws. And a lot of people have switched to compostable already. Require reusable foodware for on-site consumption for new businesses. So what I tried to do is just focus this on new businesses that would be coming online and could incorporate this into their infrastructure. And then prohibit polystyrene foam foodware use by food vendors. So again, it focuses on the takeout ware and eliminating that starting in January, and then prohibiting single-use plastic carryout bags for food, which is a little loophole in our current plastic bag ban. So those are the things I put into the January 1 or the 2021 implementation round. And then 2022, and what I was very thoughtful in terms of what else people are going to be having to comply with, and SB 1383 will be coming into full view in 2022. So, so that's kind of sprinkled throughout here. But the first thing was require all restaurants to use reusable foodware for on-site dining. That'll give us a year to help people kind of convert over to that. Require that all disposable foodware that is compostable be certified. And again, this kind of coincides with our SB 1383 requirements, which when we get to that point, we'll have a collection system to collect this stuff and process it. Prohibit all sale and distribution of polystyrene foodware. So this gets at the full scope of our foodware ban, our polystyrene ban that we had incorporated into the original draft. So this would take on the retail component. And then have the disposable cup charge. So this is probably one that's going to get negotiated. There was some concern by council about this, this concept. And so anyway, so I think an alternative we could think about is having some sort of incentive for reusable containers. So that's kind of the flip side of that. And so we could think about how to word that. But anyway, so that's the phasing that I thought through, and I just wanted to get your feedback on that to see if you guys have any questions or comments about that or anything else we should think about from that perspective.
Can you move it up a little bit, Patrick?
Yep.
So in the first bullet point under effective January 1, is that the disposable foodware there can be plastic, or is it?
Yeah, so it's still, you're still allowing plastic disposable foodware, but it just has to be on demand only.
And the reason of not, for not going to compostable foodware is we don't have a facility to process it?
Exactly. So I didn't, this is one of the pieces of feedback that we got from actually the businesses that we met with, was that, you know, why are you making us switch to something that basically has no, you know, you can't even collect it. And so that's why I moved it down. And actually we can talk about this a little bit more, but that's why I didn't require everything to be compostable as of January 1st.
Yeah, well, my only comment on that would be that, you know, even if it's not collectible, at least it's biodegradable if we will go to compostable there. So it's like, I don't know, I would continue that. And then moving a little bit farther down on your list to the 2022 list, just noting that in the last bullet point on disposable cup charge, there is a typo on the first sub bullet there. Okay. At the very end, 2 businesses, 2.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. All right. So, and this is actually something else. It's you raised a good point, Greg, is that we didn't specify alternatives for the most part in any of the ordinance, partly because, you know, there's a problem with recyclables, there's a problem with compostables, et cetera. So we didn't really specify the alternatives. And so I think one of the things that may emerge from the conversations with council is that in the 2022 timeframe is when we could actually say that all accessories, all foodware accessories should be compostable, so that we switch everybody out of plastic, period.
That would be great.
So. And other cities have done that too, so it's not like we would be the first. Yes, Commissioner Miller, you're muted. You're muted, Lonnie. Oh. Hang on. Oh, there you go.
So that's a ways away. And what I've noticed is that in the past 6 months even, retail has started using more and more plastics that are recyclable. I mean, they're well known to be recyclable, 1s and 2s, and even 5s that are being, I don't know if 5s are being recycled now, but 1s and 2s are being recycled. Don't know if banning 1s and 2s for the compostables makes much sense. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because the compostables, well, that means eventually they're compostable, but it may take a year as opposed to 100 years or something like that. Right. But 1s and 2s, I think by 2022, we might want to take another look at what is being reused. I'm seeing a lot of 1s and 2s now in areas where we used to get styrofoam all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think at some point early on in our conversations about this, we had zeroed in on 1s and 2s as potentially being alternatives because of their recyclability. And I agree. I think that we could probably revisit that to see if there are ways to integrate the stuff that we know is readily recyclable as well. So that's a great point.
I would just propose an update of our information on what's being recycled.
Sure.
Thank you.
Jim.
Am I unmuted? Yeah. So yes. I have a thought about the 25-cent charge, and if that money just goes to the vendor, then effectively they'll just build it into the price and they'll reduce the cost of the product by 25 cents and then increase the 25-cent charge. I would much rather have a 25-cent or 50-cent rebate for bringing your own cup. I mean, a carrot sounds much more attractive than a stick, especially when the price of the stick is built into the price of the product. Unless the 25 cents is going to a recycling fund or a fee where the vendor doesn't get it, then it wouldn't be built into the price. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so this was basically developed along the same line as the charge for disposable bags. So we have a 10-cent charge on disposable bags, which is supposed to be a deterrent for people to bring in their own reusable. So yeah, I think the verdict is still out on this one a little bit. We were hoping that some of the other cities were actually incorporating this as of January 1st, and then they stopped because of COVID. So we were hoping to glean some information from those experiences, which we haven't been able to do. So, so I'm very happy to kind of this one actually in the text of the ordinance gets very complicated because of the availability of reusables. Then you don't have to charge. So anyway, so it gets fairly complicated. So I would very much be open to some other ideas. And
do vendors have any thoughts on whether they do one or the other, prefer one or the other?
Well, so I think that is going to be a topic that we can raise with the business community as we do more outreach here over the next couple of months. And that is definitely a question for them because although it does get them more revenue to potentially buy better disposable products, you're right, it does kind of get us into this other area of, well, we don't really want to charge that to people who can't pay for it. And then how do we verify if they can't pay for it and all that kind of stuff. So it gets a little bit more complicated. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so noting those couple of things that we just talked about, like the alternative 1s and 2s and the 25-cent cup charge and the kind of the elimination or limitation of plastic as of 2022. All right, so I'm planning to meet with Mayor Coors and Mayor Pro Tem Holstage tomorrow to talk a little bit more about the outreach that we're going to do over September, October timeframe to roll this out. So this is good. I think it gives us a good starting point for conversations with the business community, and I think we're certainly open to some additional ideas. But but I think it's a good starting point. So we'll see what else they have to say tomorrow. Yeah, Commissioner Miller.
Okay, so there must be a way that this can be written so that, you know, if we get to January 1, 2022, we want to tweak it, we could tweak it, or, you know, say in a year from now, we should be able to tweak some of this stuff. I mean, like the 25-cent per cup business should be tweakable at that point, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We could put something forward and it could go through, and then we could reevaluate mid-year and see where we're at and see if anything needs to change. I can also ask them for their input on that too, because they were very interested in moving forward with a comprehensive approach, and I want them to understand some of the implications of doing that too. So, all right. Okay, great. Thank you. And I think the next one is mine too. So let me just jump over to the walkability stuff. So the consulting team that's helping us with the walkability master plan and Safe Routes to Schools plan, it has been gathering some data and doing some research on just general safety trends and collision trends and that kind of thing throughout the city. So they've been gathering that data. I did meet with our little walkability subcommittee or ad hoc committee yesterday, and so got some good feedback from them on this stuff as well. But I just wanted to share it with the full group, and in particular, because we'll probably be moving forward with the Community Advisory Committee concept in the September timeframe. And I just wanted to get some early feedback from you guys about any kind of missing pieces to that and any other feedback you might have on the outreach side. So anyway, again, the consultant prepares these little memos through different points in the process, and this one is on communications and outreach. And so one of the key components of the outreach is this community advisory concept, committee concept. And so we worked with them to identify an initial list of potential groups and organizations to engage. And then we work with them to maybe identify some names associated with that, but this hasn't really gone anywhere, and we haven't actually reached out to any of these people. But I wanted to go through it with you and maybe share some of the feedback we got from the ad hoc committee, and then open it up to you guys to have any more questions. So Community Advisory Committee will be used to provide some guidance and feedback on the plan, as well as provide guidance on outreach efforts related to gathering data and gathering information about problem areas as well as solutions. So it will include, they included me and one of our engineering folks on this, but we're, I think, mostly just the city representatives. We thought it would be good to include somebody from Sunline because they probably got good data on user ridership and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to engage the tribal council, given that they have a prominent properties in downtown, especially if the arena gets developed. Kate Anderson is their PR person. Anthony Ramirez is economic development. We would have a couple reps from the Sustainability Commission, so you guys can maybe figure out who you would want on this. We identified Roy because Roy's also on that the code enforcement subcommittee for the 1PS too. So maybe Roy and somebody else. Palm Springs PTA Council. So we identified a couple of people from there to get at some of the school-related concerns. Also folks from PS, the Unified School District. Also PS Cares and Volunteer PS has done a lot of work around public safety. And so we identified a couple names there. The bicycling group, we want to make sure that we include their voices here as well. Although bicycling is not necessarily a key component to this, I think there are a lot of related concerns. And so I'd like to get their input as well. Folks from 1PS to get a neighborhood perspective. We just listed Kathy and Dawn as placeholders for now. The front runners and walking group. I don't know, does anybody know any of the folks that are involved with that group? The runners and walkers. Okay. The Chamber of Commerce, so making sure that we got a business representation, so whether it's the Chamber and or the Main Street folks. And then this Gail Whetstone was with Desert Regional who has done some public safety and injury work in the past. So we thought of reaching out to her as well. So a couple of the comments that we got from the ad hoc committee was we're going to reach out to Grace Garner to see if there are any folks from some of the northern communities or communities on the north end that may want to participate in this, that may use public transit and do some walking from that end of town. So we'll engage her on that. Any other thoughts that you guys have in terms of this list of organizations, at least to start with, in terms of the some sort of a community advisory committee? All right. And throughout this, we'll be coordinating pretty closely with the general plan update folks, because they are working on the circulation portion of that general plan. And so there should be some overlap between what we're developing and what they're doing. So they're aware of this. And so hopefully we'll continue to engage with them going forward.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah.
If you need someone else to be on the subcommittee, I have lots of thoughts on this, and I'm very, I'd be interested in joining the other two folks on there.
Okay, sounds good.
And there's some overlap with bicycle stuff too that I'd like to bring up. But
yeah, that's great. Okay. And then we had sort of this grand vision of doing workshops and attending in-person events and things like that. And so that's all going to be reevaluated as we go forward with COVID. And so we'll probably figure out virtual ways to do these things similar to the way that they're doing the general plan updates. So do a first workshop on the concepts and what the whole project is about, and then do another workshop on draft plan ideas a little bit later in 2021. And again, if we have some of these in-person events, maybe in the early of 2021, then we could potentially participate in a few things and get some public input that way. And then we also talked about doing some walkability audits. And so the consultant basically would do some observational analysis, is what this is, at various locations around the city. And so again, we talked to the ad hoc committee, and we refined our thinking on some of these places with them. And so I think that we have maybe a more refined idea of where we want to do these things. So for example, in downtown, we were thinking of maybe something around Tockwitz and Indian and Palm Canyon. We also talked about maybe doing something around the curve there down on South Palm Canyon, or somewhere in between, because there's a lot of pedestrian activity that crosses Palm Canyon down in that area. The transit hub, we talked about doing something in between Farrell and Sunrise on Ramon. And then we talked about doing something potentially around event-related pedestrian safety. So there's a lot of things that happen, like at the convention center, and also, you know, thinking about the arena edition, and maybe some other places that have sort of more event-oriented traffic, like around Tockwitz and sort of close to downtown, but not quite there. And then, so anyway, so they said that, and then the other place was around Sunrise and Ramon, because that is definitely a hot spot for us that we want to do. So anyway, so they said that they could also do those virtually. So there's a way that they can do that, kind of tuning in other ways. So those are the initial thoughts. And so what I plan to do is we'll use the ad hoc committee as sort of our sounding board and get some feedback from them, and then we'll kind of report out to this group how we're moving forward to see if there's any other additional thoughts that you guys have on our direction. So any questions or comments on that? All right, great. So that'll be moving along. And again, I think in that September timeframe, we'll probably flesh out this community advisory committee participation and look towards having a meeting with them probably late September, early October. And then the final topic was their kind of the graphic identifier that they may use to kind of demark this work. And so to date, everybody has zeroed in on colorway 2 with the little people and the Palm Springs colors here. So I think that's the color scheme and the graphic that we'll probably be moving forward with as we go forward with the project. So Jim.
So the only thing I want to add is that, you know, a bunch of interesting things happened in El Paseo a year ago. I mean, they put in a bunch of ideas that I thought were great, a couple that were learning, and they were installed a bunch of things and were soundly rejected, and they were removing things now. So I want to make sure that you know, that they learn from those lessons, because, you know, I think that a lot of good things, you know, might come from that. So
you said El Paseo?
Yeah, in Palm Desert, remember they did bulb outs and they painted those intersections bright colors. They put trees. Everyone hated the colored intersections, but they did spend a lot of money on pedestrian safety, and I thought it was interesting. The reception was not what I would have expected. So maybe that's El Paseo is different than Palm Springs. I don't know, but Palm Desert versus PS.
Well, that's a great point. And so one of the things that I was clear with the consultant about is we need to really understand what lessons learned are from various projects that we've undertaken, and like you're saying, maybe some of the other Valley cities. So that's definitely something that's on their radar. So we'll point them to that in particular. So.
Thanks.
All right.
If I
Yep.
just graphically, I do like that colorway number 2. I think it really works, and I'd love to see that.
Great.
It's 7.
All right. Thank you, guys. And I think that's it for the walkability.
Thank you, Patrick.
Sure.
See, the next item is item 2 under new business, and that was the Palm Springs General Plan update. The intention was to have Commissioner Goins, who is a member of the steering committee supporting the general plan update, give a report on what the steering committee has been doing and the plan for the general plan update. He actually had agreed a couple of weeks ago to speak at the meeting and give us an update. So he's not here. He's resigned. But I do know that there was a steering committee meeting on June 9th. I listened into it, where they did go over the general plan.
Say, Roy, excuse me.
Yes.
I'm having difficulty hearing your words.
Yeah.
Is it, I don't know, everybody else I'm having no problems with, but for you, your voice seems low or it's not projected, or I'm not sure if.
I think it's not, your mic isn't picking it up, I think, very well.
And sorry, I don't know.
Oh, did you not hear me?
I heard you.
Yeah, I had to turn it up to hear Roy.
You know what, we've got
Everyone
to
else
say
is
we
really
can't
loud.
hear people. So I want to hear you. I can't hear you, and I don't know if it's, yeah, maybe you're not close enough to your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm a little closer to now.
Yeah. That's a little better.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah. Yep. Just talk loud.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
basically we know that there was a steering committee meeting on June 9th where they did discuss the general plan vision statement and priorities for the general plan update. I believe there was a steering committee meeting last night. Commissioner Friedman made reference to it, and it sounds like that you, David, may have some comments to add.
Yes, thank you. I did watch the, watch the meeting last night. The largest sort of topic that took, well, the topic that took the most time was sort of wordsmithing the sustainability sort of high level vision statement. So there's some work there. And I have access to the Ventura County General Plan that was just approved by their Planning Commission last Thursday. And I've been going through that and identifying some of the language that they have on sustainability. So I pushed that off to Dave Newells of Planning Services this morning, and he's going to take a look at it. One thing that I thought was interesting is that as required by state law, and presumably PlaceWorks is working on this for our general plan, but as part of the safety element of the general plans, they do need to have a greenhouse gas reduction and climate adaptation section in the safety element. So that will cover a large amount of the issues that we're looking at, like greenhouse gas reduction, electrification of buildings, renewable energy, and some things like that, basically reduction of petroleum-based sources for things. So I've sent that off to Mr. Newells, and hopefully he'll be able to get some inspiration from that plan.
Thank you. And this is something that we probably should have as a regular topic at our commission meetings, more information about what's going on with the general plan. In fact, we had scheduled David Newell from planning to give a presentation at the March meeting, which of course was canceled. Are there any other comments on the general plan? Question?
Should we have him come to us in September if we're doing a September Zoom meeting?
We certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we may have a better sense of how some of the work that we're doing will be integrated with that at that point too. So that'd be good timing.
Okay. The next item in the agenda, which we've touched upon a bit previously in the meeting, is maintaining open space, and Vice Chair McCann has some comments to make.
Yeah, quickly, I'm just going to give you an overview. not so much of the Mesquite Desert Preserve concept, but of what's been going on with Bel Air Greens. Bel Air Greens is a defunct 9-hole golf course in the Talkeets Creek floodplain south of Mesquite Golf Course and west of Talkeets Creek Golf Course. I'm not sure how many of you have walked it, but it's falling into disrepair. The property is approximately 35 acres. Jane Garrison, our fearless leader for Save Ozo Canyon, has been in touch with the owner over the last year and communicated the intent to enter negotiations with him to purchase it. The purchase is a little bit complicated because it's actually owned by 5 members of the tribe. And the current owner is actually a lease owner. So it's the lease that we're looking to purchase. With that as the background, then on April 20th, out of the blue, the city received an intent to convert application for the Bel Air Greens golf course. And the intent was to convert from its current general plan land use designation, which is open space park or recreation, to MDR, medium density residential. Of course, such a general plan amendment would open the door for the owner to sell his land lease to a developer, Ash Incorporated, whose plans for this property include 13 two-story apartment buildings, 3 of which would directly abut the Talkeets Creek Wash as it approaches El Cielo. In addition, and the total would be 312 rental dwelling units, surface parking with 2 off-street parking zones, an extension of Mesquite Drive to El Cielo, and 2 management and office buildings. So that would require approval by City Council of a general plan amendment and a change of zone application. On May 13th, the applicant was notified in writing that the application was incomplete, and he was provided with a list of submitted materials that were still pending and required. And the latest I have is as of June 18th, 2020, the application is still incomplete and has not been submitted. So what does this mean for us moving forward? They'll have to get their act together and get a more complete plan in to the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission will be the first sieve, and they'll have to make a decision whether to recommend this to City Council or not recommend it, and then it will go to City Council, I believe, for a final vote. All of the 1PS neighborhoods surrounding Bel Air Greens are opposed to this. We've put together a letter writing campaign to the Planning Commission. And so I think at this point, as far as the Sustainability Commission is concerned, we should wait and see if they do get their act together and complete their application. And if they do, then we might be able to weigh in with our own recommendation and get a vote on it here, opposing this move. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Robin. And we can also keep in touch with the Planning Commission to find out when it comes to their attention.
Yes.
If no other comments, then we can move to the final item under new business, which is looking ahead by our staff.
Okay. So I did think it would be just a good thing to do just do a little look ahead quickly to next year and really starting this fall. And I would like to do this maybe in a more robust way in September to kind of lay out the year strategically, but mostly because there are a lot of things that are going to be happening in the next year. And I wanted to make sure that kind of we're all on the same page in terms of what effort it's going to take to do all of this and kind of the level of attention it's going to get throughout the city, I think. And so the plastics, of course, is going to be a big one. We'll see how that goes forward, but anything that goes forward is going to require a fair amount of outreach and engagement, both on the business side as well as the public side. So, so that will be a significant undertaking. And then SB 1383 is another one that we keep talking about, but it's actually happening. And I've reached out to a consultant to help us start to craft our ordinance. And then also am working, starting to work with PSDS to start to renegotiate their franchise agreement. And all of that will be incredibly significant. And that's going to require probably outreach starting middle of next year to start to get people engaged and prepared for organics management, both in workplaces and businesses as well as at home. So that's going to be a huge deal and going to be starting to percolate here in the fall. And we'll be bringing a draft ordinance most likely through the council or through the commission probably in the November timeframe, and then on to council in December, January timeframe. So that'll be moving forward. The greenhouse gas emissions inventory, the initial feedback that I've gotten from them is that our 2010 numbers are going to change fairly significantly. So as you may recall, we thought that we were pretty much on track to meet our goals in 2010. And so that we will probably get some new data that shows that we're probably a little bit over at that point as opposed to under. So anyway, so that's going to be interesting and maybe have some more implications in terms of other things we do on the greenhouse gas inventory or the greenhouse gas reduction front. We've also asked them to do a 2020 look ahead, so it'll incorporate the switch over to DCE, so we'll have a better sense of where we're going based on that activity. The demo garden, again, that'll be going forward, at least in theory, until I hear otherwise. And so again, we are going to be managing that project. I think our maintenance staff is pretty short-staffed at this point. And so some of that's going to fall to us to kind of oversee. And anyway, so lots and lots of things are happening already. And then we're being asked to, work on the smoking ordinance, which is also on our radar. And I'm sure that there's a couple of other big things that I'm missing. But what I want to do is get you guys thinking about those things and kind of as we go forward, if there are any other big things that should be on our radar so that we can kind of integrate that into our planning process in the fall. So I don't know if I missed something, let me know. Other thoughts that you guys might have in terms of big things that you see on the horizon for this commission that we should start thinking about. And again, maybe have a more concerted conversation about it in at that September timeframe. So Commissioner Miller.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm interested in getting back to, all of the above that you've described, of course, but turning food waste into biogas with PSDS and our wastewater. We obviously have continued to collect wastewater from our commercial industry, such as it is, but from Doug Lohr's standpoint, it's a good time to start because we're not so heavily burdened with people that are going down to the restaurants now. Mm-hmm. And it would be better to start something like this when the volume isn't, so overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So for the first 2, 3, 4 years, you actually want the volume to be low. Mm-hmm. What you're doing, and you're gradually working into it. So I see this as being a long-term thing, but I think it's not too soon to start looking in that direction.
So I have a kind of an interesting piece of news on that front, just a little nugget. So I was talking to Don in engineering a couple weeks ago, and he is crafting kind of an on-demand engineering contract. And so with Stantec as one of those providers, and so Stantec is the one that did the initial analysis of the wastewater treatment plant and provided some ideas about the biogas and the anaerobic digestion facility there. And so this would enable us to engage them very easily to do some more thinking about how we kind of go into more depth about the analysis that they've already done so that we could actually get a handle on, okay, how much food would we need to have? What would that look like? How would we need to process it? All of that. So I'm very excited about having that available to us. So I'll let you know when that comes through, so we can do that analysis. And a part two, other little nugget, a little teaser for September. We're going to have somebody coming to talk to us about a new technology that they are piloting, that they are trying to implement on the north end of town. That should be very exciting for us and to have implications for both our recycling program and our organics management program. So just a little teaser.
Well, we all know that Palm Springs has to branch out in terms of its economy, and the economy of the future is circular.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. David.
Yes, you sort of mentioned it earlier, but I'll be focusing on the climate action roadmap, and I've been spending a lot of time following what all the other cities and counties are doing on what we call reach code, beyond code. And certainly once we have the GHG inventory, it'll be easier to benchmark about where we are and where we need to go. And I've already got a lot of work, but working with the reach code team and come up with some fairly detailed cost benefit analysis. All of these cost effectiveness studies have already been done for all of the other cities and counties that have had the Energy Commission approve their plan. So Patrick, I'll be working pretty closely with you to get some proposals, and then that would go to us, to our commission in September, hopefully, with the GHG inventory, and then over to council, and then they can provide their feedback and direction. And after that, I can work on whatever ordinance they might like to see. But the advantage is that, kind of like in plastics, there are literally dozens of cities and counties throughout the state, well, largely Northern California Bay Area, but have already done this. And so all of the ordinance language exists and all of the cost effectiveness studies exist. So there's a lot of learning that's already been there. And the codes and standards team reached out to me last week or so, and have asked to help us out on that. So we'll have some good technical assistance and don't have to pay for it.
Super. All right, any other things we should be kind of having on our radar as we move into the fall? And I forgot to mention the walkability plan, which is also moving forward then too.
And actually, this is a good segue into the final item on the agenda,
Yep.
which is commissioner comments and items for future agendas, meeting agendas. We've already had some comments that I think do play into the September meeting from Commissioners Miller and Friedman. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to comment on or see on the agenda for the September meeting?
Okay, I do. So we're short a member or two. How many people are we short now? It seems like we're.
I think we're
How many? 3?
I think we're up to 3, I think is.
Okay. The reason why I'm interested in this is I think it is imperative that we branch out and become a much more diverse group that that represents our whole population, not just a part of our population. I think it's absolutely essential. I think that it would be so much easier for our work as a whole to be inclusive. It's got to happen. And so if there is any role that the commissioners can play in terms of selecting other people to join us, I'd certainly would very much like to be involved in that. I know I don't think we ever have, but it's gotta be out there. We just can't just pick the first person. We've got to solicit. We've got to work at it.
Right.
And that's a good point, Lonnie. And back, I think it was in January, the City Council had some discussions about interactions with the Commission and the Council, between the Commission and the Council. And they did talk about actually looking at how the Council and Commission interact, but also they talked about doing more active recruiting for the commissions, where hopefully the commissions would have input in terms of what their needs are, skill sets, backgrounds, interests, and that would be advertised so that we could find people that meet some of our current needs. And Patrick and I have discussed that off and on over the last several months. It's not clear when they will be actually filling positions. We have actually 2 vacancies, but there are, I think, 3 positions terms that would have ended in June, but they've been extended through December. And so those will all be open for filling, and hopefully our incumbents will stay with us. But this is something that we need to actively pursue with the city council and whoever is going to be doing the interviewing, that we need to have a say, and we would like to have active recruiting as well. One characteristic of this commission is that we have a lot of people that really take on projects on their own, and that works very well. And out of necessity, we did that in the couple of years before or after or before Patrick joined us. We were more dependent upon the commissioners to do tasks, and so that's one thing that's been really quite successful with this commission.
And I would follow up on what you said, Lonnie, about recruiting. I think that needs to happen now. I've heard a few people have contacted us and said that they're interested and they're submitting something. So I have a feeling that process is going to start, and fairly soon. And so again, now is the time to kind of reach out to people or organizations you think might have good people, and ask them to put their names forward, because now is the time.
So is there any sort of publicity going out? Is the city, I mean, I realize the city's still kind of putting itself back together again, but obviously the city's very much involved in making sure that everyone is represented and there's equality.
Right. I don't know that the city formally advertises those beyond just posting them on the website, which is a pretty passive way to do it.
Yeah.
They've announced it at a couple of the city council meetings, and people have, some of the council members have encouraged people. But, I could certainly, I could at least put it out through social media. So I can put it in like Denise's email blast that goes out to lots of different people, and then post it on Nextdoor and that kind of thing. So I'm happy to do that to get the word out.
Oh, Patrick, that would be wonderful. I'm not really into social media myself, but I think it's a great resource for this kind of thing.
Right.
Hey, Patrick, does College of the Desert offer, I know that we have a sustainability campus coming, but I'd like to recruit somebody from college age person would be great. If that's possible, we could do something with College of the Desert would be interesting. I don't know what they offer, if there's any meshing there.
Yeah, I talked to them a while ago, and I don't know that they had a lot of programs then, but we can maybe try to get a message out to them, at least to their networks.
Patrick, if I may, I just want to get a little bit more detail on DCE, because there isn't a formal DCE report. So just to give you the exact numbers for opt-down. So as you mentioned, we launched in April for the solar customer, for the non-solar customers, in May for all solar customers. The official figures of the 40,618 Palm Springs residents and businesses, 91% of them remained enrolled in DC, so they didn't opt out. And then nearly 94% of the customers who remained in DC are carbon free. So considering the situation when we launched, those are really good numbers. They're absolutely consistent and better than many other CCAs throughout the state. And I also want to do a shout out to Commissioner Miller, because She was really the leading person throughout the spring to be calling and emailing and texting a whole bunch of people in Palm Springs, Cathedral City and Palm Desert to get them enrolled in the utility discount program. That's now been pushed back to Edison because it was their job in the first place, but we are able to enroll 167 people through outreach efforts, most of which were done by Commissioner Miller. So thank you, because she really did a lot of work there. Also on the DC board, yesterday, they approved a short list of 4 projects. I was very involved in that evaluation team. So DC staff with their energy consultant will be beginning negotiations with one company that operates 2 wind projects in the city of Palm Springs, right by the Amtrak train station in the Wash area, just to the west of Indian Canyon. 1 solar project under construction in the desert at Desert Center, and another solar storage project in Tulare County. So those will lock in renewable solar and wind resources for DCE at a really good rate. And then also we had a brief presentation yesterday for Grid Alternatives, which previously has done some solar installations in a couple of houses in the Chuckwalla Road area. Not clear if they're going to be able to do that, but once we get some clarity on what's eligible in Palm Springs in the marketing plan, we can bring that back to the commission. And then just briefly on DWA, their board met this morning. In addition to the airport grant, they got another $290,000 from the state, Prop 1, for turf conversion, and a $75,000 grant from the Bureau of Reclamation, which they'll also use as for turf conversion as part of their matching funds. And folks continue to conserve water, and cumulative savings over the last 12-month period is 18.8% compared with the 2013 benchmark. So those are some of the quick report backs from DCE and DWA.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from commissioners or agenda suggestions for September? If not, then we're at the point of adjourning. The next meeting will be on September 15th at 5:30. Likely will be a Zoom meeting, but we'll keep you posted. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, and we'll talk again in September, maybe before.
Night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.